Hello, this is Kyrie. We're just going to do our assignment. That's just going to run through a tutorial quickly. Sorry about this, but it's going to run through a tutorial quickly on how to implement a feature in GameMaker. So let me just open up my GameMaker real quick. This one. It's going to open up. For it. It's coming. Yeah, cool. So I'm going to create a new project. We're going to call it Project Player Move. This is just all we're going to implement is getting a player in and making a move. That's it. End of discussion. So we're going to add a sprite just so we can see them. Because technically we could do it without a sprite, but you're not going to actually see anything. So the SVR underscore is just the GameMaker naming convention. That's all we're going to do. Sprite player, you can technically do whatever you want. This just helps you know that what's a sprite and what isn't a sprite when you're viewing things outside of this editor, which you might actually do. So we're going to click edit sprite, and that opens up this window. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but we're just going to create a new sprite, and this tells you the height and width in pixels. So it's 32 by 32. So that's the width, that's the height. Press OK, and you double click, and you scroll into here, and you see it's basically paint. If you're familiar with the Microsoft program, we're gonna make our player blue, and it just fills it in with blue space. You can make that background color whatever you want. It's probably default gray and white, but I just made it colorful for when I'm working with not those two colors, yellow and purple. It just makes it easier for me to see. So I push check, and then we're gonna go here and we're gonna center it, and all this is gonna do is tell the game that the location of this object is at the center of the sprite, not at the 0, 0 point. That's what that point is right there. So that's how that works. You'll see later in the actual room. And then we're going to create an object, and it's going to be obj, again, GameMaker convention player. And you just come in here, it's a sprite. It right now has no sprite, so we can actually come click this, and we can pick between no sprite or sprite player. We're going to click player, and then we're going to add event. You see we have all these list events because we need the player to actually do things. So that's our goal here. There's create, it's just when it's created, that's when this is called. When it's destroyed, the alarm is like after a certain amount of time, after so many frames. And the step event is what we want. This is called every time a frame is drawn. And there's things like collision and draw and all that stuff, but all of this is actually called during the step event anyway. So if you're gonna code like I'm gonna show here, then that's the step event is good for that. So we're gonna click here, and you can pick at the beginning of the step and end the step. This just helps organization, or you just do the general step, which is throughout the whole frame. So we're just gonna do that, make it easy. So you come in here, you have all these options. There's a lot of drag and drop options there, so there is a drag and drop way to make the player move, but that would be connected more to those events. But I'm just gonna do this in a script just because it's very simple. So go to control, and you see code here, and we drag this in here, and now this piece of code, whatever we type in here, is going to be executed every time the frame is drawn that the player exists. So in here we need, what do we need the player to do to move, right? So we need to check for input, checks for player input, just comment that, just keep it simple. Yep. And so to do that, we're going to say if. So if this happens, if X happens, whatever's in this parentheses, we're going to say if keyboard check. So this is a GameMaker function. Keyboard check just basically it checks the keyboard for things happening on it. So keyboard check, there is keyboard check pressed, and there is released. As you can see, it highlights yellow when it does that, and that's just for more control. Check is just done once. Press will actually be held. It's kind of reverse of Unity, so I get a little confused when I do Unity. But in this, we're just going to use keyboard check because that's the easiest one to use. And then we have to put parentheses because it is a method. So in here, we're going to say VK up. So VK up is just, that's how the GameMaker refers to keys, is with VK. So VK up is saying the keyboard up arrow. So our arrow keys down here that we're using to move around anyway. So we need brackets to say that this is what we want to happen if this happens right here. Not too crazy. Now there's a few ways we can make them move, but essentially we're going to take its x point and add to it to move it. So, or its x and y position on, like, think like a graph. That's pretty much how it all works. So if you're going from, if we're going up, we need to affect its y, right? Because on a graph that's up and down. So, but the thing you gotta know about GameMaker is that the y-axis is actually flipped, so it actually draws the graph in the positive direction is going down, and the negative direction is going up. So if we want to move up, we need to move negative. So we're gonna say y equals it's y minus 5. Just that says 5 units, so 5 pixels in this case. So it's going to say y equals y minus 5. So it's just going to subtract 5 from y. Just a shortcut for code, just to keep code running easier. You can say minus equals, and that tells it the same exact thing I just wrote before that. So this is going to move him up. And so then, that's just whenever he presses up, he moves up. So then we're going to copy this, because we want him to move in all 4 directions. And as we'll see, it's actually going to move in 8. So some people like to put else ifs. That's just so that that'll basically prevent 2 keys from being pressed at the same time. It won't call one or the other. It'll just check the first one that's pressed and use that one. That's like saying, like, if this is pressed, if this is, or like if it's not pressed, it goes to the next thing. It'll say else. Oh, okay, so it's not pressed. Let's see if this is pressed. That's all else if is doing. So, but we're just going to do ifs because this allows us to move in 8 directions, and it's usually just much smoother. It depends on your game, of course, but in this, I think it's much better to use this. So now we need to change what's actually going on. So they're all checking for VK up right now, so we're going to go down. It's the down arrow key. And to move down, remember, because the y is flipped, we got to go in the positive y direction. And then if you check VK left, we're going to say. And to move left, the x is normal, so negative in the x direction is in the same way on a graph. It's just going to move to the left of the graph, or the point that it's at currently. And these variables x and y are built in. It knows that I'm referring to this object's x and y. They're just variables that are already into it, so that's how that works. So in here, we need it to go x plus equals 5. And now to move to the right, because it's saying x equals x plus 5, so x 5 units to the right. So we're going to save that, and we're going to say OK. And then we need something, a place for the player to actually be in. This is something Unity creates by default, and it's normally, but we are just going to create this in GameMaker. So now you have this room, it's just empty, it has this background color. We're going to go in here, and we're just going to make the color a slightly darker gray. We don't want it to be a solid color because it's really jarring on the eyes, so it's a solid color, so but we don't want it to be like any of these bright colors, and we want it to contrast with the kind of blue that we're going with. So gray will work fine for that. You'll be able to clearly see him. So you come in here and you have object player. So this is where all your objects are, is in your object tab, and this is every object that you create will be accessed from here. So right now we just have the player, so that's what's here. So it just says object player. So yeah, we're going to take this, and now we can click anywhere on here and it'll create them, and we can move them around and things like that. If you go back and so you don't draw it, you'll just see the grid, and this just shows you how it's snapping to the grid. Like, this is how it's placing it. So normally, remember at the beginning we made the sprite centered, so at 1616 that's where this object is, so that's why it's appearing on the crosshairs. So it looks it's a little nicer to place things when you do it this way. If you didn't do it, it would be placing the corner where the center point is right here, and that kind of gets annoying when you're placing things, because things are going like to the left of your mouse or to the right of your mouse, and it's kind of weird to place things like that. So that's why we centered it, just to make it simple, and it also helps with collisions later, but we're not doing that right now. So this is just the player, and we're going to recheck this so that it does draw it when the room is created, because otherwise it won't draw it. You only don't draw it when you have a set background like this type of image, because this color needs to be drawn for you to see it. So we're going to say check, and we're going to play it, and it should be good. So you're going to go in, and we have our square, it's our player, and when I go right, oh, okay, let's see. So my up, down, left, and right is working, but my right is not working. So let's go back into code real quick. And yep, Looks like I forgot to change this to right. So now it's right. Now it should be okay, so let's press play. And as you can see, you can move up, down, left, right, up, down, left, right. See? And now you get your player moving. Alright, have fun guys with that, and thank